Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are watching from. Today I have another advanced reading video, which is on a topic that is very current at the moment. It might not be a topic you talk about often, but I'm sure if you live in Europe, you've probably heard this discussed. Whenever I make these reading videos, they get a lot of views. It seems like you all really like this style of content, and I do bear that in mind, and I want to keep making videos like this for you. But the reason I also do grammar videos and vocabulary videos is because as someone on YouTube, you have to change up the content often so that it attracts more viewers. You may have noticed my channel is growing very slowly. I don't know why. I think I'm doing my best, but that's just the way it is sometimes. Sometimes things don't work out how we plan. So all advanced reading videos will be in a playlist. You can go and watch all of them, and I do plan to do lots and lots of these. I will mix them in amongst grammar videos, vocabulary, interview practice, that kind of thing. Let's get started then. So our topic today is nuclear power. Nuclear power. And before we get into the article that I'm going to share, and I will also leave in the description box, let's just go over what nuclear power is in a very simplified way and the positives and negatives of nuclear power. Now, when I give you the positives and negatives, it's not to sway your opinion. Interesting phrase there, sway your opinion. This means like a tree swaying, going from side to side. If your opinion sways, it means you go from this opinion of something to this opinion. You move backwards and forwards, your opinion changes. Now, I'm not giving you the positives and negatives to sway your opinion, change your opinion, or make you have the same opinion as me. I'm giving them to you because when we have a discussion, an educated discussion, when we go into an argument with someone about something, it's important to understand and know both sides of the argument. If you only go in with your opinion, it's very difficult for the discussion to go anywhere constructive, to move forwards. You're not open to hearing the other side. So if you want to have interesting discussions, it's important to recognize both the pros and the cons of what you are arguing. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail because, first of all, I am not a nuclear physicist. There might be people here watching that are. I know I have one student. She's on holiday at the moment, but she works in a nuclear power plant in the UK. But nuclear fuel or nuclear power comes from a chemical reaction that happens inside these nuclear reactors. This is what they are called, reactors. The power plant is the general area where this happens, and the reactor is the actual space where this energy is created. Now, the positives of nuclear energy are it creates less pollution. No carbon dioxide is produced when creating nuclear power. It's also more powerful than most types of energy. Solar power, wind power, coal, gas. It's more powerful than those forms of energy. It also reduces the amount of fossil fuels we are using, of course, because if we are using nuclear energy, we're not using coal, we're not using gas, we're not digging into natural resources to find these elements. However, there are some negatives to it as well. The first is a nuclear power plant is very expensive to build, and it's very dangerous if anything goes wrong. Now, if I'm not mistaken, statistics are that less people are injured due to nuclear energy than any other form of energy. But the problem is when something goes wrong in a nuclear power plant, it affects a lot more people. For example, I'm sure everyone knows Chernobyl, the accident that happened there. Thousands, if not millions of people were affected by what happened at the nuclear power plant in Chernobyl. If a mine collapses, it's only the workers that are affected. But if a nuclear power plant explodes or something happens, it has everyone in the area, in the country, in the neighboring countries can be affected. So this is why a lot of people are scared of nuclear power. However, when they are looked after correctly, protected correctly, all security measures have been taken, they are seen to be safer than a lot of other forms of collecting energy, making energy. It can take a lot of time to build a nuclear power plant, but that doesn't seem to be stopping people. I know the UK has a plan to make more nuclear power plants in the future. And again, a lot of people are opposed to this. And one of the reasons they are opposed to this is because once you've used the energy, the used fuel becomes radioactive or is radioactive. It's always radioactive. But once it's used, the end product is radioactive, and we can only get rid of it by burying it in the ground. It never goes away. We can't destroy it, we can't throw it in the ocean, we can't set it on fire. The only way they can get rid of it is by putting it in the ground. Now, one good thing that I discovered is actually that there's a time limit on how long a nuclear reactor can be in one position. I don't know if this is in the UK or in Europe in general, so you can let me know in the comments, but I know in the UK you can only use that space for 100 years, and then you have to find somewhere else, and that land has to be regenerated. So it's not always going to be radioactive, but 100 years is a very long time, and you could argue that it's too long to have radioactive waste there. So in general, it's a lot more dangerous. There are a lot more safety risks than other forms of energy, but it's also more powerful. Less carbon dioxide is created, so a lot of countries are weighing up their options. Do we try nuclear power, or do we stick with what we know? Now that leads us to our article today, which is Denmark considers ending 40-year nuclear ban. So let me show you this picture first of all. Now, I don't know if you think this picture looks nice or it looks ugly. In the UK, there is always an argument that wind turbines, power plants, they're very ugly. They block sea views and people are against them. But in my personal opinion, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I really like seeing how nature and people can live together. And so for me, I think this looks quite beautiful. You have the sea, you have the greenery, and then you have this huge industrial plant, and it shows the intelligence of humans compared to the beauty of nature. But let me know what you think. Is it unattractive? Is it beautiful? Does it represent humans' intelligence? What do you think? Now, the title, Denmark considers ending 40-year nuclear ban. A ban is something you are forbidden to do. So if you are banned from doing something, it means you cannot do this by law, or not always by law, but some rules or regulations. For example, at my school, when I was growing up, smoking was banned. This was not against the law, but it was the rules of the school, and if you broke those rules, you had to be punished. So to ban something is to forbid, to not allow it to happen. Denmark considers means they are thinking about it. Denmark is thinking about ending a 40-year nuclear ban, meaning for 40 years they have forbidden nuclear power. And judging by the picture, I imagine this was a nuclear power plant in Denmark that is no longer used, hasn't been used for 40 years, but they are considering reopening it. I don't know that for sure, because it doesn't give us the source of the image, or does it? No, it doesn't give us the source of the image, so I'm guessing, okay? And we can imagine that this article is going to go through the pros and cons and why they are discussing this. Now, there is vocabulary, but I'm going to go through that as we go through the article. As I always say, if you want to go through this article in more detail for yourself, I will link it in the description box. This is a fantastic website for more advanced reading. And it has intermediate reading as well. There is an AI-generated person who can read it for you. It's very helpful, but remember, it is American English, not British English. I don't know why, but the AI systems always seem to be American, maybe because they all come from Silicon Valley, but it's interesting to me. So anyway, let's start our article. Denmark considers ending 40-year nuclear ban. Nuclear power can be a controversial subject. It is seen as cleaner than fossil fuel energy, since it doesn't emit greenhouse gases. On the other hand, it is also associated with devastating disasters and dangerous weapons. Now, if you do shadowing, feel free to pause here and go back and read the same paragraph. If you're not interested in shadowing or pronunciation, we'll just look at the context and what these words mean. But if you are shadowing, I highly recommend you pause the video after each paragraph and repeat after me. So nuclear power can be a controversial subject. Controversial means people argue both sides. And whenever you discuss this topic, there's always an argument. It doesn't mean it's bad or it's good. It just means this topic is always discussed and there is always someone for and someone against. Some other examples, immigration. As soon as you say immigration, someone's going to be for it, someone's going to be against it. Donald Trump is controversial. Someone's always going to be for him, someone's always going to be against him. Any of these topics where there's always an argument involved can be considered controversial. And a very nice phrase you can use when you are talking to people, if you want to say, oh, this might cause an argument, you can say, this may be controversial, but. This may be controversial, but I support immigration. This may be controversial, but I believe nuclear energy is not the way forwards. Whatever it is you think after, this may be controversial, but. When we talk about cleaner in terms of sustainability and the environment, we mean it doesn't produce as much negative emissions, gases, as something else. It doesn't mean physically it's clean, it just means it doesn't create as much waste. Emit greenhouse gases. When we discuss something emitting something, it means it gives off greenhouse gases. And we do not use this to talk about people so much or projects. He emits sarcasm. It's very professional. It's very specific and technical and is reserved for chemical reactions and scientific subjects. On the other hand, it's also associated with devastating disasters. As we discussed, Chernobyl is a devastating disaster that is associated with nuclear power, meaning when we talk about nuclear, we think of this. By association means it immediately makes us think of this other thing, negative or positive, it doesn't matter. I associate the dog's corgi with the Queen. It just means the Queen had dogs that were corgis, and when I see corgis, I think of the Queen. In 1985, Denmark banned the production of nuclear power following pressure from anti-nuclear activists. However, the European country is now considering ending that 40-year ban. I think this is quite simple to understand. Whenever you see this, anti, this is a word that we can put before any other word to demonstrate that we are against it. Anti-something, anti-English, you don't like speaking English. Anti-vegetarian, you don't like vegetarians. Anything that is anti-something means it is actively against it. And the opposite of anti is pro. So if, for example, this said pro-nuclear, it would mean they are for it. So anti and pro. Denmark's Minister for Climate, Energy and Utilities, Lars Agard, has announced that the government will analyse the potential benefits of new nuclear technology. A report of its findings is expected to be ready to share in 2026. So again, I think this is simple to understand, but just a quick summary. The government is analysing, they're testing, they are looking, they are evaluating the potential benefits, what benefits nuclear technology could bring. When we say potential, it means it doesn't currently bring those benefits, but they could in the future. We often use this word to discuss clients or customers. Potential clients means they've shown interest, so they could be future clients, but they're not right now. A potential customer, again, someone has shown interest. I have to message potential students. They're not students at the moment, but perhaps in the future they will be if I can attract them and make them interested enough in lessons. And just be aware again, this is the American spelling. So of course, with the English spelling, a Z is always an S. So we would say analyze, not analyze. Currently, more than 80% of Denmark's power comes from renewable sources like wind, biofuels, and solar power. The country has also committed to ending all fossil fuel power production by 2050. Renewable sources like wind and solar power, we all know those. Biofuels, if I'm not mistaken, a biofuel is when you get rid of biological waste, and the heat and energy that comes off of that is a biofuel. I'll double check. Yes, exactly. So I had a friend, or did I have a friend? No, I didn't have a friend. I think I saw it in a video online. So he had a garden. And he would put all the scraps and waste from the garden that he didn't use or couldn't use into this big bucket. The bucket was closed, and there was a big pipe going from the bucket to like a generator type thing. So all the heat that was produced by the decomposition of these organic matter. So decomposition is when it breaks down, becomes something else. So the decomposition of this organic matter, this biological matter, these crops, this waste food, the skins of fruit and vegetables, the heat that was created powered this generator, and he could use that energy to power his house, for example. The country has also committed to ending all fossil fuel power production by 2050. When we commit to something, this means we're kind of promising to do it. So this is why we say, when you get married, you're committing yourself to this person. You're promising yourself and promising this person that you will be with them forever, or however long forever is. I am committed to my work. I am committed to my studies. I am promising myself or someone else that I will do it. I want to do it. I'm motivated. While Denmark has no plans to build large, traditional nuclear power plants, it is looking at the possible benefits of smaller, modern, modular nuclear reactors. So they have no plans to build traditional nuclear power plants, meaning that they will use the ones they already have. They're not going to build new ones. It is looking at the possible benefits, the future benefits of smaller, modern, modular nuclear reactors. Now, modular, I'm not sure what this means in terms of a nuclear reactor, but I know what modular means in general. Typically, when something is modular, it means all the individual parts are separate, and when we put them together, they create this thing. So for example, there's a phone company, and I cannot remember the name of it now, but I will find it and put a picture on the screen. You know how when you buy an iPhone, if something breaks, you have to buy a new iPhone? Or if you buy a Samsung, it's cheaper sometimes to just buy a new Samsung rather than replace all the pieces, the screen or the camera or the battery. There is a phone company, they still exist, and they created modular phones, which means every single piece of the phone can be bought individually. So if the camera breaks, you just buy a new camera, replace it. If the battery runs out, you just buy a new battery, replace it. They did this because they wanted to stop the waste and the disposal of phones. I don't know how many phones we throw away a year, but it's got to be millions, you know. Everyone has a phone these days. Many people buy a new phone every single year, even though there's nothing wrong with their old phone. And these products cannot be destroyed because the battery is highly flammable. It can catch on fire very easily. So they cannot destroy those items. They just get put together and they take up space. So this company wanted to create a phone where you don't have to throw the entire phone away. You just replace the pieces over time and you keep this phone forever. So this is what modular means. So I imagine in terms of nuclear reactors, modular would mean parts of the power plant can be used elsewhere, can be replaced. It's not purely a nuclear power plant. All the pieces can be moved around and used in different places and replaced if needed. If there is anyone in the comments that works in renewable energy or power plants and I'm wrong, please correct me. It's always good to learn something new. Agard said the government needs to know if the new technology is really safe. It also needs to know how it should dispose of nuclear waste and if the country's authorities are prepared if something goes wrong. So they need to know if the technology is really safe. It also needs to know how it should dispose, get rid of, throw away nuclear waste, because remember I said at the beginning, you can't just throw it away, you can't get rid of it. It has to be buried deep in the ground. The country's authorities are prepared. So when we talk about authorities, this is anyone in the country with authority. But in this particular instance, they're probably talking about the government, the fire brigade, so the fire service. If it's American English, they say the fire service, fire department. British English, we say fire brigade, police, medical authorities. So people that would be able to help if something went wrong. How would they handle this situation? We all know that, of course, we can't have an electricity system based on solar and wind alone. There has to be something else to support it, Agard said. He also explained to newspaper Politiken that the government needs to look at how using these newer nuclear technologies would affect Danish society. Try saying this really quickly. Newer nuclear. Okay, I think this is self-explanatory. I don't need to explain this paragraph, but they just want to know, they want to find out exactly how Danish people will be affected if they start using this nuclear technology. If Denmark does decide to lift the ban, it will be joining a number of other European countries already producing and using nuclear power. Now, very interestingly, in the UK, we don't talk about nuclear power, but we use it a lot. I think we don't talk about it because it makes people scared, but we do have nuclear power plants in the UK. France gets around 70% of its energy from nuclear power and connected a new reactor to its energy grid just last year. And Denmark's close neighbour Sweden gets 40% of its electricity from nuclear power. Now, connected a new reactor. Reactor is what I explained. It's where this chemical reaction happens. An energy grid. So the actual meaning of grid is a square. You know, when we used to use maps before we had phones, maps were in squares, weren't they? So you could say, okay, square B18, and you could quickly find that square and figure out where you were. That is a grid. An energy grid is how countries get their energy, their electricity, from the government supplies. So every country will have a government supply of energy, won't they, of electricity. And we call this the national grid. In the UK anyway, it's called the national grid. It will be called something else in every different country. The national grid. So this is the governmental electricity, energy, and how they transport it from one home to the other. In fact, 44% of countries in the European Union, EU, produce nuclear power, as do non-EU countries like the UK, Switzerland, and Ukraine. That still makes me sad to see non-EU countries like the UK. But oh well, I have to move on. So, how long has this video been? Oh, okay, 30 minutes, that's okay. So, if you have questions, if you want to ask me something didn't make sense, this was a difficult topic or too easy, please let me know down below. There are fantastic questions here, which you can go through and read and create example answers to if you want to. What is your opinion on nuclear energy? In my opinion, there's no right or wrong answer for this because we all come from different situations, countries, we all have different access to different things. For example, in the Middle East, they might not be looking at nuclear energy right now because they have a lot of their own natural resources. But for countries like the UK that has to import a lot of their energy, buy energy from other countries, we need our own energy as well because, for example, if there is a world crisis like COVID-19 or another world war, you can't be trading with other countries. You have to be able to produce something by yourself. Self-sustainable, that's what we call self-sustainable. Everyone and every country needs to have some level of self-sustainability. So let me know your thoughts on today's article. It's a very specific topic, but as I always say, the only way to improve your English is to challenge yourself. And if you talk about topics you've never discussed before, you're definitely challenging yourself. Let me know your thoughts down below on the video, on the topic on nuclear energy, and I will see you next time. Have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.